What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Rutgers Rundown podcast, episode 6. Nick Hart, your host, alongside my co-host, Matt Mangam. A lot to talk about today. Rutgers women's basketball wrapping up their regular season. Rutgers men's basketball still trying to make it into the postseason. Then we got some baseball, softball, a little bit of wrestling, our wrestling expert, Matt. And then we got some lacrosse to talk about. But first up today, we'll talk about Rutgers women's basketball. They punched their ticket to the Big Ten tournament. They're going to Indy, the final team to make it, and they made it on the final day of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, entering that game against Penn State, we knew Rutgers had to beat Penn State. They did 75-70 and get some results to go their way with, Northwestern losing and Purdue losing, and it all happened. And I'll be honest with you, Nick, I don't think they were going to make that tournament. And the fact that they made it, hats off to them. Rutgers wins basketball, good job.
Well, my big concern wasn't that the other two teams were going to lose. Purdue was going up against Indiana, which Indiana, a much better team, and then Northwestern was going up against Nebraska, I believe.
That game was much more even, though, actually.
It was, but I was fairly certain that the outcome of those games would have went in Rutgers' favor. My thing was I didn't think Rutgers was going to be able to beat Penn State.
Really?
Well, I mean, you look back at the last time these two teams played, it was a heroic comeback from Rutgers that ultimately won them that game in a huge collapse from Penn State. And, one of the leaders of that comeback was freshman Keone McMiller.
Yeah.
Hitting some clutch threes late, but, obviously didn't play in this game. Obviously has still been out for quite some time now with an injury. So coming into this game, it was a little bit of a scare because, you didn't really know where the offense was going to come from. But when it mattered most, this team stepped up. I got to give them a lot of credit. Rutgers had a number of different players, 5 different players in double figures. Not something you see often.
Great to see that.
You had Maya Petticord, Zakara Perkins, JoJo Lacey, Elisa Thompson, and, of course, Destiny Adams all in double figures. Destiny Adams recorded yet another double-double. I mean, she is just inevitable down in the paint. 19 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists as well.
Yeah.
So was closing in that triple-double. Unfortunately, was unable to do so on senior night.
That would have been awesome.
It would have been something. I mean, granted, Destiny Adams has only been here 2 years. She's playing her second season as a transfer over from the University of North Carolina. But the impact that she has made on this program and the legacy that she leaves behind after her 2 years here, it's something you don't see from a lot of players, and that's going to be something that Rutgers is going to be hard-pressed to duplicate and try to replace next season because, not only is she a great player off the court, but on the court, but off the court, when you talk to other players and coaches, everybody says she's kind of the glue, the glue girl, if you will.
Yeah. Coach is always saying she's hugging everybody in practice.
Yeah.
That's what Coach Weiss is always saying.
But a very nice ceremony to honor the graduating students from this team: Destiny Adams, JoJo Lacey, China Cornwell, and Awa Sidibe. Unfortunately for Sidibe, she did not play with an injury. And I think even more concerning for Rutgers was China Cornwell went down with an ankle injury in the second quarter of that game. Her and Destiny Adams kind of got tangled up a little bit going for a rebound, and Cornwell seemed to be in some pain, never checked back into the game, and that's honestly something to look at going into this Big Ten tournament because that's the true center that Rutgers has in this team.
Yeah, I was actually watching the game on TV, and I was actually I was watching it while I was doing an assignment, but I remember hearing on the broadcast, I think Dom Savino said it she's currently a lot of pair now, and you could see her. I actually rewound back on the TV because you could do that on Big Ten Plus, and you could see her go down. She's literally screaming and everything. So really scary sight to see. She had to be carried off, but I believe she came back out on the floor, not to play, but she came back out after.
She was with the team.
That's good at least.
After the fact, but
did
least not come back in.
Interesting.
And now Rutgers will pack their bags. They're going over to Indiana to play in the Big Ten women's tournament. And, that was kind of the goal, I think, for this new season for a lot of teams was to make the tournament because obviously it's unlike years of the past where every team makes it regardless. Top 15 teams made it this year, so Rutgers going to face Nebraska. Nebraska, not a terrible team, 19-10 overall this season, 8th in the Big Ten. And Rutgers obviously has played them before, but it was a much different game. Nebraska did not shoot very well from 3 in that game. And, of course, the one player that was in that game for Rutgers that more than likely isn't going to be in the game on Wednesday is Keone McMiller.
Yeah, so I mean, that again raises the question of where the scoring is going to come from. I mean, the positive thing is against Penn State, you saw many different players step up with the points. Like you said, what was it 5 different players in double digits? Yeah, so that's a great sight to see. Again, that's the key. Lisa Thompson, I mean, I gotta say, Nick, something I'm impressed about was 9 for 10 at the line. That was, she got to the line, she made her free throw shots, and then Maya Money Petticourt sinking those threes. If you're not gonna have someone like McMillan, pulling up and taking these threes, Petticourt has to do it. I mean, she took 8 shots, sunk 3 of them. Me personally, she has to keep doing that because that's what she's good at doing. And like I said, Lacey will get one sometimes, Perkins will get them sometimes. But I think, obviously Adams too, but if you don't have McMillan on the floor, someone who could, just bank in threes, you got to have Petticourt out there. I think you look at this team, let's eliminate McMillan from this. Adams is the first scorer, then Lacey, then probably Petticourt's probably third, you got to say. So the key is going to be just everyone's got to contribute. Everyone has to step in because without McMillan, without possibly China Cornwell, they're going to be down a lot of players.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think going into this Nebraska game, the one player you watch out for is Alexis Markowski. 6'3" senior center, averaging 16.8 points per game, 8.1 rebounds per game, both leading her team in those categories. And we talked about China Cornwell being out, so you hope that she makes a return for that game because you don't want Destiny Adams in that situation where she has to deal with someone that's also kind of a center forward mix but plays more of a center role.
Yeah.
And then, you think about players like Janae Walker maybe. But China Cornwell being in that game, I think, is something that Rutgers really is hoping happens just because if you're going to deal with somebody with that kind of size who's been that dominant in the paint, both scoring and rebounding, you want one of your better rebounders out there. And Cornwell, I mean, just such a physical player, somehow finds a way to always get the rebound, and especially on the offensive end. I don't know how she does it, but she'll pull down a rebound, throw up a shot, and it goes in. And that seems to be her specialty.
Yeah, I love watching her play. I love when there's 3 players around her, but she'll just stick her arms up and you see her pull it down. The strength she has and everything, man, it's very important. And the fact that Rutgers will be losing her and Adams in the offseason, 2 players very different. I mean, also kind of similar though. They can both rebound, they both can score, but again, they kind of have their differences. But it's just Rutgers is going to lose a lot. With the rebounding issues, the rebounding end of the floor, they're going to have to look for the replacements. But yeah, China Cornwell playing is very, very crucial. So that's something to monitor, Nick. And, we'll see heading up to game time. We'll see what our stats is. We'll see once the game happens. And then, depending on the result, if Rutgers actually truly, needed her, which I think they will. But yeah, it's going to be very, very important. China Cornwell's health is a huge key for that game.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned kind of what Rutgers is losing going into next season because obviously you lose Lacey, you lose Adams, you lose Cornwell, you lose Sidibe. And coming into next year, your returning players are Jakara Perkins, Keomi McMillan, Janae Walker, Lisa Thompson, Antonia Bates, and Maya Petticourt. So, and Precious Wheeler, 6'3" center coming in. So,
center recruit.
Got to see how it plays out, but
I think she's going to start.
I think between her and Janae Walker, there's a good chance they see a lot of minutes at that center position. But we'll keep it with basketball. Move over to Rutgers men's basketball. And Matt, I mean, if this game is not just signifying how the season has gone, I don't know what does. Rutgers goes on the road to Michigan to play the number 15 ranked Michigan Wolverines, and a heartbreaking 84-82 loss on a buzzer beater.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Rutgers had 57 first half points, Nick, is insane. I mean, I only watched the first half because I had work the next day, so call me a fraud if you want. But, I remember the first half, halftime, 57 Rutgers, 49 Michigan, and we look at the shooting stats. I mean, the Rutgers were shooting lights out, 67% from the floor, their most points in the first half since 2013. And in the second half, it all just collapsed and fell apart.
Well, I mean, Rutgers scored 25 points in the second half, and they shot 25% opposed to the 67% that they shot in the second half, in the first half. And it was one of those games where you wanted to believe as a Rutgers fan, you wanted to say, all right, this is our time. Mm-hmm. But deep down, you just knew. You knew better than to believe, because this is not the ranked Reapers. This is not the Ron Harper Jr. teams that are going to knock off Purdue. it's just not the case. I mean, Michigan gets the ball in with 3 seconds left. They get it into Danny Wolf. He finds Namari Burnett, who is the best three-point percentage shooter on this Michigan team, and he drains a long three. I mean, on one hand, you can't really guard it any better than Harper did, but on the other hand, it's how do you let the ball get into Burnett when you know he is the best shooter on the team?
Yeah, and I mean, we could talk about, this win would have been huge all you want. I mean, obviously, it would have helped Rutgers with the seeding in the Big Ten tournament, and it would have confirmed their spot in the Big Ten tournament.
And it would have been a nice ranked win.
Yes. But, I mean, I want to be a little positive here. Look, the team played excellent. Granted, they're playing Purdue. We'll see. And also, you're right, I want to backtrack on the excellent. They played excellent in the first half.
Oh, yeah.
If they can play like that, in the Big Ten tournament, because they're all basically in the tournament already, but if they can play like that in Indianapolis, they can make a bit of a run. But it starts with Purdue. That's going to be a tough game. And then you play Minnesota at home. You got to beat Minnesota at home to just get a decent seed in the tournament. But this win would have just been, it really hurts because this would have been a massive win for Rutgers.
Yeah, and I think, I want to say I saw a scenario where Rutgers has to win one of their next 2 games to guarantee that they're in. It's not the only way they can get into the tournament, but a win makes it they don't have to rely on anyone else. With 2 losses, though, Rutgers would have to get some help. And you just don't want to go into the end of the regular season with that. You don't want other teams, you relying on other teams. But unfortunately, that's what Rutgers has done. They've played themselves into that position. I do think Minnesota's a winnable game. Purdue is going to be a tough game. They're a very good team, as we saw the first time that Rutgers and Purdue played each other. Right now, ESPN Match Predictor has Purdue as an 87.4%, I guess you'd say, favorite in this game. And rightfully so. Purdue has been the much better team. Rutgers has not really shown that they can win big games. And I have to agree with you. I think I said this on the post-game broadcast for WRSU. I said that team that Rutgers was in the first half, I think that team beats anyone in college basketball right now. I think the team that you saw in the first half was the same team that you saw the entire weekend when they played in the Vegas tournament over Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody beats that team. The unfortunate part of it is that you have not seen that team all season. You've seen glimpses of that team, but honestly, that's the first time where you saw like a sustained full 20-minute period of this team playing like that. And is that going to continue? I hope so from a journalism and a fan perspective, but the reality is I don't think you see that again.
I mean, it's obviously the question is why aren't they playing like they should be? Why isn't, Harper, Ace Belego's going off like that, Tyson Acuff, 4 for 8 from 3. That's insane. I mean, I think also that has to do with, he hasn't played a lot of minutes, but give that guy minutes. Come on. Tyson Acuff's a beast.
I want to say he was something like 3 of 5 from 3 in the first quarter or in the first half. And
yeah.
Knocked down, I want to say 3 in a row. But then, the whole team went cold in the second. There wasn't really one person you could put the blame on. It was just a colossal collapse. There's no other way to put it. And not only would that have been a nice win for, the number next to Michigan, but that would have been 3 in a row. And that's nice momentum to build going into the conference tournament, where at this point in the season, that's your only hope of getting into the NCAA tournament is winning the Big Ten tournament, which, again, I'm not going to say that they're going to, but if you're Rutgers, you have to say, listen, the only way we extend our season and play meaningful basketball is to win this tournament. So they got to get – I don't want to say they have to get things figured out because I think it's a little too late for that, but if Rutgers has any hopes of salvaging the season whatsoever, they got to win out.
Yeah. I mean, I think no matter what happens, obviously it's going to be seen as a disappointment because obviously they're not going to go and win the Big Ten tournament. But yeah, I really think, just show a fight against Purdue because the last outing at Jersey Mike's Arena, 68-50 loss, that was a really bad game from Rutgers. Terrible. 50 points, not good. So, go to Mackey. I think you have a close game, maybe lose by like 8. It's not terrible. it's tough because it's going to be a tough game for them.
It's crazy to think that's sitting here in March after what was probably one of the most anticipated seasons in Rutgers history, that we're sitting here saying that an 8-point loss to a Purdue team is best case
That's
scenario.
not even as good as they used to be.
Yeah, it's crazy to sit here and say that, but it's a reality of the situation. And Rutgers basketball, like I said, like we've said so many times before, big letdown. Not really sure where you go from here, but it is what it is at this point. But one team, Matt, we'll try not to have all losing teams this weekend. We have mostly losing teams, but Rutgers wrestling has been pretty solid this year. They're number 11 in the country right now,
Yes.
if I'm correct, and they have the Big Ten tournament coming up shortly.
Yeah, so, it's been a little bit since their last match, since the UPenn match. Now they've just been kind of preparing for Big Tens. Finished, like you said, ranked number 11 in the country. Wednesday, they're going to release all the seedings for the Big Ten championships, all, who's going up against who in what round, who's what seeding. That's always good to see because you want to see guys that had great conference seasons like Dean Peterson and Dylan Chauver. Really, really great conference records, I should say. Want them to get higher seeds. But looking at last season, Big Ten championships was really good for Rutgers in Maryland. Dylan Chauver won the Big Ten title, his first, and the program's first since Anthony Ashnell and Nick Siriano both won in 2019. Then going into NCAAs, Chauver got All-American honors, so pretty good stuff from him. So it was a really good postseason for Rutgers last year. It was something to build on because after Siriano and Ashnell, there hasn't really been a guy that Rutgers has really looked to be, the guy. They haven't had a guy that you're like, okay, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Now with Chauver, you feel confident that, he could replicate that. So we'll see what happens. He's had a little bit of a step back this season, but I think, he's definitely capable of getting on the podium again at Big Tens and placing at Nationals. So, but like I said, we'll see all the seeding matchups on Wednesday. I'll be on site for the Targum, which is great to hear. I'm really excited for that in Illinois this year. And then they'll wrestle in Philly for Nationals, so I'll also be there. So we'll see. I think this year, guys like Dean Peterson, as well, not just Dylan Chauver, are also capable of placing on the podium and getting All-American honors. It's just a matter of if they'll wrestle to their potential. Last year at the Big Tens, a huge, huge match with Dean Peterson. He knocked off number 1 Matt Ramos and then lost in the next round, which was really... I remember talking to him before the season started, and he said, I had that huge win over Matt Ramos, and then I lost in the next round. So it's just got to be consistent because, you do all that work to beat the guy who's number 1 ranked or number 1 seed for your weight class at Big Tens, and then, you can't build on that. You lose to someone else. So I think he has the potential to obviously turn up and get, some good wins at the Big Tens. Dean Peterson's only Big Ten loss was to Nicola Rivera of Wisconsin. He also beat Penn State's guy 125, Luke Lyadal, who was undefeated at the time. So there's a perfect potential. I think if you're going to ask me who are 2 guys, Matt, that you think could win a Big Ten title, I'm going to tell you Dean Peterson and Dylan Chauver. You could also look at Savakuski, but the problem is heavyweight has Gable Stevenson and Greg Kirkfleet, just 2 guys. By the way, that's going to be the final. That's going to be the title match. I can guarantee that my life.
Shot right now. I
can guarantee my life on that. Greg Kirkfleet versus Gable Stevenson will be for the Big Ten title, and Stevenson's going to dominate and win, which is crazy because Kirkfleet's one of the best heavyweights in the country. But the fact that Stevenson is just that good that he's gonna up the floor with him. But I think if you're, like I said, if you wanted to ask me who are 2 guys that can have success at Big Tens, I'll tell you Dean Peterson and Dylan Chauver I'm the most confident in those 2 guys.
Well, it's weird that you have this long break in between the end of your regular season and going into the Big Ten tournament and then having the national tournament right after that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very unique to wrestling because you don't see that. Rutgers women's basketball finished the season on Sunday. They're heading out to Indy, play the first game on Wednesday. Same thing with the men's team
That's crazy.
So in an aspect, I feel like it's kind of a tough turnaround for these guys to be able to kind of ramp things back up after not competing for so long. But you look at the sport too, and these guys are giving it their all every time they're out there. It's so physical, and it's almost like you need the break at this point. But
yeah, they got to get healthy too.
But Rutgers wrestling will have a lot more on that in the coming weeks as the Big Ten tournament and the national tournament get underway. But from the sports that are ending now to the sports that are just beginning, we have Rutgers Rutgers baseball traveled down to South Carolina to take on Coastal Carolina in a 3-game set, dropping all 3 games. First game a 10-0 7-inning mercy rule, and then Rutgers was walked off in game 2, 6-5, and then Rutgers dropped the last one 6-1. And Matt, I think we had a little bit of higher expectations for this team going into the season. Obviously, a lot of new faces, some new coaches, a lot of young players as well. Trying to really navigate this whole season is Owens and try to find the lineup that works. But to be at 4-7 through your first few games, your first 3 series of the season, not at all where I think fans thought this team would be.
No, I mean, besides the Kennesaw State series, Rutgers obviously came from behind to win that one. But the Grand Canyon series, and the Coastal Carolina series, they just did not look good. In Grand Canyon, they had the offense. In Coastal Carolina, they don't have the offense. So this team is in a really weird spot. We've seen flashes, like look against the loss to the win against Grand Canyon. They won 18-7. And they beat St. Joe's at home 12-6. And Coastal Carolina, put up no runs in the first game, 5 in the second, close game, and then the third game, the final game of the series, put up 1 run. So it's kind of like, what's going to be the issue with this team today? Will it be the pitching? Will it be the offense? It's tough. This team, it's obviously a young team, a lot of new guys on the roster, so it's hard to place, this is how they're going to do, this is what they should do. It's hard to place that expectation, but it hasn't looked good so far.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like we said, a lot of young players. The leading hitter right now as far as average goes for Rutgers is the junior outfielder Trevor Cohen. He's been exceptional, hitting .370 on the year. But then you go to the next couple of guys, and you have Nick Tomasetto, who just really broke out against St. Joe's, finding his spot. He is a redshirt freshman, and he's 2nd or 3rd, I believe, in batting on this team. And then you have Peyton Bonds, who's another new player to this roster, who is in the top 3 in batting. And for a team that only returned 11 players, it's going to be difficult to be successful this season. But you got to turn things around quick. I mean, you have a game against Delaware on Tuesday, and then on Friday you start your first Big Ten matchup against Iowa.
That's really quick.
Yeah,
I feel like it wasn't as quick in the past.
Well, I believe the first game of the season at Baton Field was February 25th, which I believe it was from Dom Savino. He said that is the earliest game played at Baton Field ever. So
yeah, but I'm looking at last year. All their non-conference series, they had way more non-conference series last year.
Well, it's an interesting schedule because you played Delaware and then Iowa, and then you play Penn, Wagner, and then a series against Cal Baptist.
Yeah.
But then you really get into the Big Ten play starting against Oregon, March 21st, so towards the end of this month.
I guess it's just like this one Big Ten series is out of the way, but like looking at last year, they had like Winthrop Series, Old Dominion Series, Charleston Southern Series, High Point Series, North Carolina Series, Delaware Series, UConn Series. You get what I'm saying. It's much more non-conference series. And this year you have these 3 series start the season, and then bang, you're right into Big Ten play. I mean, I know you have a few more one standing games with these non-conference teams. It's a little different, but I don't know. I'm just surprised.
Yep. Now we'll move over to Rutgers softball. They played in the Jane B. Moore Memorial Tournament. That's a tongue twister trying to say that 5 times fast. They played Louisiana, Auburn, and McNeese State. Rutgers only winning 1 game out of that. They won on Sunday 7-0, and it's another team where the expectations may not have been the highest, but again, you didn't think that Rutgers would be sitting at 8-13 through their first 21 games of play.
Yeah, really, it's tough for Rutgers. I mean, I know Louisiana was a good team. They faced number 19 ranked Auburn. You went up against Cuff Sledding again. They've been obviously facing some tough competition recently with Missouri, Tennessee, some tough opponents. But I mean, it's hard to again also put expectation on this team because it's a lot of new players, a younger roster. They play Seton Hall this Wednesday. Seton Hall is 5-9 overall. They play Seton Hall in South Orange. So, was looking for a bounce-back game, you could say, despite coming off a win over at McNeese State. And then they go to Georgia for some games. I'd say this is probably one of their most winnable tournaments, North Dakota, West Georgia, Colgate, and Georgia State.
Yeah, not playing any top 25 teams the first time in forever.
I would say this is like probably their most, like they could definitely win, it's 5 games. They could definitely win at least 3 of the 5 here. And then you go back to are finally back at Piscataway. So, I don't know, kind of maybe hope to get some momentum against Seton Hall and then some games in that Bob Heck Memorial Tournament in Georgia, and see what happens when you get back to Piscataway for your games against Wagner in Maryland.
Yeah, and the big thing that coming into this season was the addition of Ella Harrison, freshman pitcher. She's been outstanding. The record and the stats don't necessarily say that. 5-7 so far, but it's kind of been the one bright spot that Rutgers has had all season. And there needs to be more. There needs to be some help because Harrison has pitched well, but the offense hasn't been there when she does pitch well, and it seems like the opposite is true. When the offense is there, the hitting is not.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have Jill Anderson's leads the team with a 358 batting average, but there's games where she'll, help out games. She'll struggle. I mean, besides really Jill Anderson, Haley Stripling, and L.A. Matthews, there's really not much help, Nick. I mean, it's literally them. And you look at the stats, maybe Bailey Briggs with a 299 average. But, I mean, if it's not them hitting, no one else is going to contribute.
Yeah, and obviously you can't have that in softball, and has not been a winning recipe for the Scarlet Knights so far this season. But we shall see what the rest of the season has in store for them. We'll move over now to lacrosse. Rutgers men's lacrosse coming off of another tough game, another tough loss falling to St. Joe's.
This is different than the Stony Brook loss. A 9-8 loss, close out Stony Brook. 11-5. I mean, that second quarter especially, getting outscored 6-1, and then Rutgers just scoring 2 goals in the second half overall. There's a lot that's kind of like you come to mind, like what's going on with this team.
Yeah, and I mean, look, to St. Joe's credit, they came out with a great strategy. There was a lot of pressure on both the goalie and the defenseman to clear the ball, and it worked. I mean, Rutgers was unable to get out of their defensive end so many times. And it's kind of tough to see because you saw them roll to start the season. I mean, you had a ranked win against Lehigh, then you beat up on LIU, you have a ranking, and now you drop 3 of your last 4 games. I mean, not what you want to see, especially. I mean, granted, you played Army, who's a good team, but the Stony Brook loss was bad. And the St. Joe's loss, not that the score of that game was bad, it was more so the play of it. I mean, 11-5, not close, but it's not a blowout. But if you watch that game, it just seemed like Rutgers had no answers. I
mean, I do want to say, St. Joe's played Duke, number 7 ranked at the time, close. They lost 11-9. So close, loss to them there. But this St. Joe's team also lost to Sacred Heart. And I mean, Sacred Heart, like, come on, no disrespect, but like you can't. Like, if you're gonna lose to a team that lost to Sacred Heart, what are you doing here?
I mean, and another thing is obviously Carden Stoller is an amazing goalkeeper for this Rutgers team, but he can only take you so far. I mean, this is the first game all season that he has allowed more than 10 goals. And you would think with that kind of statistic, Rutgers would have only lost 1 game. Well, no, they've lost 3. And in the 2 other losses in all 3 losses they've had this season, they've failed to score double-digit goals. They scored 8 against Stony Brook, 3 against Army, and 5 against St. Joe's.
Yeah.
I mean, got to do better than that. It's also like you got to give your goalkeeper a little bit of help. I mean, Stoller's out there playing out of his mind. I think he faced like 30-something shots against St. Joe's.
He scored for you.
And he scored, yeah. He scored a goalie goal. And just nothing to show for. But we'll move over now to Rutgers women's lacrosse, our last topic of the day. And again, unfortunately, Matt, it has been just equally bad. Granted, 3-2 record, so a winning record, but coming off of a 12-6 loss against number 4 Yale, and that was in New Haven.
I mean, I have a little bit of a take here. I think this women's lacrosse team is better than the men's lacrosse team. I
agree.
I think, they lost a heartbreaker to Army, 10-9. Then, besides that, they just lost to Yale. So both of their losses, the Army one, granted, the Army women's team is not as good as the men's Army women's lacrosse team. Sorry, let me restart that. The Army women's lacrosse team is not as good as the Army men's lacrosse team, but it's still a good team. And their wins have been good. The Lemoyne win kind of is like the LIU win for men's lacrosse, and then the Delaware win and Monmouth wins are 2 good wins for the women's team. And now they play number 16 Stony Brook at SHI Stadium. So this is a game where it's going to be a little tough because they had that winning streak heading into New Haven, Connecticut. And granted, again, Nick, that's number 4 ranked Yale. So, that game was going to be tough overall. To lose 12-6, I mean, obviously you lost by double. They doubled your scoring, so it's tough. But, it's going to happen. But now they play Stony Brook at home on Wednesday. Number 16 ranked the Seawolves. This is a game where, again, they're not favored, but I feel like they have more of a chance in this game than they do against Yale. In 2023, by the way, Rutgers women's lacrosse faced number 6 Stony Brook at SHI Stadium. I was on the beat for women's lacrosse, and they won 12-7. That was my first crazy good memory of covering a game. They beat number 6 Stony Brook at SHI Stadium. Granted, they had Cassie Spills with 4 goals. She was obviously a legend, but it's happened before to a better Stony Brook team. And this Rutgers women's lacrosse team is much younger. I feel like I'm saying this for every single sport. It's a very young team.
Yeah, that seems to be the theme of Rutgers sports this season.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, you got players like Goldrick, Lily Dixon, Alexa Corbin, all these players, Delaney Sutley, who've all been stepping up. So you gotta get them going. You have Lexi Coldiron in the cage. She's a great goalkeeper. It's possible. The chance for an upset is there. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah, without a doubt. But hopefully, Rutgers women's lacrosse can get things back on track. And a lot of sports, Matt, that we will have coming in the next few weeks, obviously, as the spring sports start to kind of pick up a little bit more, get into Big Ten play. But the winter sports are coming to an end, and it's been an interesting ride for the winter sports. So we'll hope for a little better fortunes with the spring. But that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. You can find the podcast, as always, on thedailytargum.com. Or you can go on the YouTube channel at The Daily Targum. For Matt Mangam, I'm Nick Hart saying so long for now, and stay tuned next week for another episode of the Rutgers Rundown podcast.